Okay, so welcome to my latest in the mini series where I talk about fishing over the years and why I fish for various species. We've done the bream one, we've done the chub one, you can see those on the YouTube channel, and today I'm going to talk about roach. We're here at Sutton in Shropshire, and I've had a few smaller fish already this morning, but I've just picked up the first decent fish of the day, and it's a absolute beauty. It's 2 pound 8 ounce, and yeah, most people may go a lifetime without seeing a 2.5 pound roach, but we've been lucky enough to get one. Way, okay, good enough for John Wilson, it's good enough for me. We've been lucky enough to get one early doors at the target weight. So yeah, so hopefully you can sit back, you can enjoy yourself today. Look at that, look how fat that is across the back. You can enjoy yourself, listen to my ramblings, and we'll talk a few memories and we'll talk a few tactics. So I hope you enjoy it. We'll get this one back now, and it's gone overcast, so hopefully we may get one or two more. So we're here on Sutton Pool in Shropshire. It's been a horrible all morning, to be honest. The rain hasn't stopped all morning. It's 1 o'clock now. Rain kind of went away about half an hour ago. We got a couple of fish while the rain was coming down though. I had 3 or 4 8, 10 ounce fish. I had one really nice one at 2 pound 8, which you know, a few years ago 2 pound 8 would have done my season. You know, it's such a nice fish. You need to be careful you don't take for granted fish of that size. So roach, and why am I talking about roach today? Well, I think roach are probably one of the favourite fish of all anglers, I would say, whether you're a match fisherman, specialist, pleasure fisherman. There's something about them, and I remember, you know, one of my earliest memories being a child and fishing on the Shropshire Union Canal with my dad and my brother and my granddad. We'd all be in a line, and I'd be catching these little gudgeon, and now and again I'd get a roach, you know, nice silver scales and red fins and everything, and you think, yeah, I want to get a few more of them. And yeah, so one of my earliest memories is roach and roach fishing. And what I do remember is, and this is probably the first time I realised that you could start being selective about the type of fish you caught with your bait. I remember my dad always used to have a little sneaky tub of casters that he never gave me, and he used to start fishing casters, and he would always catch more consistently larger stamp of roach, 8, 10 ounce fish like I've been catching here today, and we used to call them caster roach. I don't know if that's an old expression or a northern expression, but when we started getting roach like that, we used to call them caster roach. So yeah, that's when I first realised, you know, changing your baits could probably change the fish you catch, and now I have quite a huge selection of baits that I use for catching roach, and maybe I'll talk about them a little bit later, the stuff that I use and why I use it. But well, for now, let's just stick with discovering them. I think one of the places that I used to fish for them was a place called Pennington Flash, which was it's an old mining. It's a flash caused by mining subsidence near where I live, and we predominantly used to fish it for perch, but when we used to quiver tip maggot feeder, occasionally we'd get a nice roach. And when I say nice roach, they'd be a pound, you know, just over a pound maybe, but they were few and far between, but they seemed huge, you know, especially, you know, I'm talking about me still being at school or just left school, you know, so they did seem like massive fish, these pound plus roach. So you started like thinking, how can I target these? How can we start selecting roach above the perch and stuff like that? And I didn't really know that much then about locations and swims and where you'd find them. And then we started moving across various places in Lancashire and Cheshire, and targeting them. And you'd read about them, and a 2 pound roach was always the target. You know, I spent a lot of time without catching a 2 pound roach, and we wasn't picking them up. We was getting a few ones and stuff like that. And then I remember at the time I'd be about 15, 16, and we went on holiday to Anglesey. It was a place we used to go a lot with my parents, and there's a lake in Rossniger called Maylog Lake. And at the time we'd be on holiday. Me and my brother would go down and we'd fish quiver tip for the perch in there. And one day, one of us, I can't remember who it was, caught a huge roach. It was like 1 pound 4 ounces, and we weighed her on the little Samson scales, the old spring balance. And we thought, wow, we found some roach. So we changed bait over from maggots and worms and started fishing breadflake, and we started catching more and more. And in the end, we actually changed and we stopped fishing quiver tips for them and started fishing wagglers. We used to make wagglers out of peacock quill and 3mm brass bar that we used to push inside and owldite in. So we was fishing big lumps of breadflake on waggler floats about 30 yards out over beds of mashed bread. And that was the first time we really found a big roach place where we could specifically target them. And we were catching not huge numbers, but you know, we'd get up before breakfast, me and my brother would come down and we'd have 6 or 7 roach each, and they'd all be over a pound to about, I don't think we ever had a 2 from there. I think there was all about 114 was the biggest that we got. But that was like real eye-opener, being able to go and target roach. And straight away I'm thinking, so we've changed here. We took the worms off, we took the maggots off, we've put bread on, and we've moved the stamp of fish up again. We're catching bigger and bigger ones. But the challenge then was, you know, as I get older, where do I go? Where do I go and target these roach from? So, you know, it was before social media. So newspapers, angling times, word of mouth, fishing club matches, that kind of stuff. And we came across a place called Winterset Reservoir, which was in Yorkshire. And me, my mate Steve, and my brother started going up there. And we started going up there. We started work then. We was all working and we had cars. And we started going up there after work. So we'd work till 5 o'clock, jump in the car. Then it'd be an hour and a half's drive up there. Get there, you know, 5:30, rods out by about 7, which is like, you look at that now and it's madness really, isn't it? And we'd fish for the roach on this big reservoir till about 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, then drive home and go to work the following day. Now I would say fishing for the roach on Winterset was the first time that I really started to get my act together in roach fishing. Started getting my bait right, my rigs right, my rods, my bobbins, everything. We started working on that and making things happen. Not too similar to what I'm doing today. We were fishing helicopter rigs with oh gosh, I can't remember what we used to call it. We used to get the little green feeders and stick weld Arsley bombs into the bottom of them so they cast distance. So we could cast about 60, 70 yards with these homemade feeders. And then just up from it, we'd have a short 2-inch feeder, similar to what I'm doing today. But that was when I first discovered that fishing my line as tight as possible and fishing as short a hook length as possible meant that instead of getting bleeps, we was getting fish. We was getting roach on the bag. Every bleep was a fish. And I actually wasn't using bobbins then. I was using springers. We made some out of old quiver tips and put an eye on them, and they kept your line constantly under pressure. Now it was a great time. We went up there for a couple of winters, mostly after work, but we did go up on Saturdays as well. And kind of the story of my life. I'm sure that I didn't get a 2 from there, but I think I must have broke the lake record for 115s. Most fish that I caught were between like 112 and 115, and that was same for my mates. There were a couple of people, of course, who everyone was a 2, but you know, not for me and not for my mates. We got a lot of big fish. But listen, I enjoyed catching them. We didn't get the 2s, but you know, it was a good time in my life, and it really switched me on to roach fishing and fine tuning my rigs and finding ways of catching them. So I'll quickly mention my approach to feeding as well. Now I've mentioned the feed. So I'll always feed through a feeder and fish clipped up, so I'm fishing really accurately. And I usually start with a combi feeder like this, a decent sized combi feeder like that. And the reason I do that is to get plenty of maggots into the swim as soon as possible. So I'll have 4 or 5 casts with that, whether I'm catching or not. If I keep catching, then I'll keep using that and I'll keep the maggots going in. But if it slows down, then I'll take that off, and what I'll do is I'll use one of these small window feeders, and I'll just fill it with maggots and then just pack it with the ground feed at the end, and that keeps the bait going in. Oh, they cast really well, they're great feeders these. It keeps the bait going in, keeps the flavour in, but it reduces the amount of food that's in your swim. And if you're not catching in big numbers and you're only fishing for 1 or 2 roach that might be passing through, you don't always want to be filling it with maggots. So scale it down. And then another nice thing to do is I like to get a bit of hemp in my swim as well. So what I'll quite often do when I finish putting the maggots in, these combi feeders, all you do is you take the end caps off and I'll pack it with feed, put some hemp in, pack it again with feed, and then cast that out like that, 3 or 4 casts like that, and you've got a little bed of hemp and your feed of choice in there as well. So that's a good way of just using your feeders to the best advantage. Combi feeder, open-ended feeder, and a window feeder, and they're all on quick change links, so really good to use. So after about 2 or 3 winters on Winterset, I came off there, and in truth, I didn't do much roach fishing. My mind wandered to other things. I started fishing the meres for bream, and I got kind of hung up on that. Summer after summer doing that, and then my winters I got into my pike fishing and my chub fishing. I really enjoy my chub fishing on the rivers as well. So it was a while really before I got the roach bug back. And I remember one day a friend of mine, we was fishing this lodge in Lancashire, and we was actually fishing for perch, but me and my mate were trying to catch live baits, and we were catching little roach, 2-ounce roach, which perfect little perch live baits, and then from nowhere hit something. My mate this is, and it took him a while to land it in, and when he got it in, it was like the biggest roach I'd ever seen. It was £2 12-ounce, and it was like, wow, you know, we hadn't had a 2 before then, and then suddenly we've got an upper 2 from a place where we was feeding up in the water just trying to catch live baits. Well, as you can imagine, we then thought we found a roach water, and for the next 2 winters I think we went on there with roach gear and didn't have another fish over a pound. It was just like one random fish in there, but it really stuck in my memory, that fish. It just seemed absolutely huge. It just seemed disproportionate for a roach, you know. So yeah, that kind of really into the back of my head thought, I've really got to catch one of those one day. And then nothing happened again for a few years, as I say. And then I heard about a place in Scotland called Loch. I think a lot of people will have heard of Loch. It was great for about 4 or 5 years. Up in Scotland, up near Stranraer. Absolutely beautiful place. As you'd imagine, it's a loch. A lot of history on there. It had a castle in the middle of it. It had a stately home and a new castle built at the side of it. It had moats, islands. It was rocky. It was really, there was something about the place. It was almost mysterious. Every night, thousands of rooks and crows would come in, and jackdaws and roost in all the trees around you, and it'd be deafening. But there was really something about the place that intrigued me. But the thing that intrigued me more than anything is that I knew it had done £3 roach, and it had done £3 roach quite recently. So I emailed the bloke who ran it, the fishery manager, who's a really nice chap, Kevin. And he was very helpful with information, and we booked a cabin on there, the old lodge, the old gate lodge. You could book the loch for a week with 4 of your friends, and that's what we did. So yeah, the first time we went up, I don't know, it was about 10 years ago, something like that, maybe a little bit longer. The 4 of us went up and we spread out. We all found our own spots, and of course I walked around with Kevin, because if one thing I've learned in this life, it's to listen to local knowledge, and Kevin was very helpful. And we walked around. There's 2 or 3 places I looked at, but one place kept drawing me back. There was it was called the Steps. Step Island was opposite me, and where we fished, it kind of channeled the loch into a tight area, and it had done good fish in the past. And Kevin had said the week before the people who'd fished it had been matchmen, and they hadn't really touched the roach. So I thought, you know, it's been untouched, I'll give it a go. Got myself set up, and again now this is where the bait approach come into it. You know, in the past when I've roach fished, I've been quite meagre with my baiting operation, but this water had lots of small roach in as well. Kevin used to call them guppies, and that's what he used to call them. Have the guppies in your swim yet? So I knew I had to feed them off to try and get the bigger fish. So what I was doing was, at about 5 o'clock each evening, I'd get about 20 balls of ground feed laced with hemp, broken boilies, and a few maggots. Didn't want to put too many maggots in case it brought the guppies in. And I would literally put 10 or 12 of these big balls over each rod, and usually within a few minutes you'd have fish topping on the surface, and you just want to feed through. And again, that's one of the first places when I kind of thought to myself, it was a really clear water, and I didn't want to put a light coloured ground feed down, because in my experience, roach don't like feeding over a light bottom. I think they're susceptible to predators, cormorants, otters, goosandas, whatever they are. But I just think silverfish, no matter how big they are, just feel insecure feeding over a light bottom. So I started using a black ground feed. I'll show you the one I currently use now, and I still use a black ground feed mixed with a more traditional ground feed with some coriander and everything. As I say, I'll talk you through that, but especially when the water is clear, I do like to use a dark ground feed. If it's a bit more coloured like it is today, I'm not too bothered. But so anyway, this is how we fished, and I always remember Kevin said to me, you know, it's a big loch and there's not a lot of roach in, so you know it can take them a couple of days to find the bait. But when you're only there for 6 nights, obviously you get a bit nervous. And first night I saw fish rolling over my baits and stayed up for most of the night, and absolutely nothing happened. Got up the following day, tidied everything up, thought it through, went out. There's a lot of Canadian pondweed in it then. Went out with a rake, cleared the swims again, made sure it was all perfect for the following night. Second night, exactly the same, 20, 30 balls of feed in, fed it quite heavy. I should probably say we was fishing mini boilies, 6, 8 and 10 milli boilies, because there was so many small roach in. You know, they were a nuisance. So it did the same again, got my baits out, felt the bottom, got it all clear of weed and everything. It just felt good again, it felt perfect. And again, unfortunately, went through the same night, nothing happened. But what I did see on dark is I did see a couple of really big silvers roll. But again, disappointingly, first light the following day, nothing. So the third day, I'm set up and I'm sat there, and my rods are actually not cast out. They're on the rests as they are here today now, and I've got the big bucket of bait at the side of me here, and I'm sat thinking, and none of the other lads had caught anything, so there was really no need to panic. But it gets into your head, doesn't it? It gets into your head a little bit. And Kevin come round, and I always remember he was chatting to me, and he said, "What are you thinking?" I said, "I'm a bit nervous." I said, and I told him what I was thinking. I told him not had anything. I didn't know whether I should move, and he said, "Remember what I told you on first night? He said, it takes at least 2 nights to find the fish." And he said to me, "You've got a good plan, Gary. It's a decent swim. You're baiting it well. You've got this pinch point between the island and the bank. You know, don't lose your nerve." He said, "Stick with it. Don't lose your nerve." And that kind of made my mind up. Again, as I said, local knowledge. Listen to it. So I said, you're right, Kevin. So I pulled my bait out, sat back down, relaxing. We're on holiday, remember. I think I opened a little bottle of red wine, just keep the cold out. And I was just there relaxing, and then just before it went dark, all the little ones, the guppies as we call them, were all topping all around the baited area. But then I saw a really big swirl, and then 5 minutes later another big swirl. And suddenly my confidence levels are up, and I'm thinking, they're here, they're in my swim. And I was expecting a bite. I was on my rods, I was watching them, and nothing. And with these rigs, you don't normally get bites. You normally get a fish. You know, you don't get beep. You're normally on with them. And it got to 11 o'clock, then 12 o'clock, and it's 11:30, and I'm thinking, oh, don't let it happen again. But it was a different night. It just felt different. It was warmer. The breeze had died down. And the key thing was I could actually hear swirls out in the loch over where my bait was. So I was really confident. And then about midnight, 12:30 or something, I got my first take. And the way we used to fish there, or I used to fish with my waders on, because it was really quite shallow and very, very rocky. There'd be boulders like this all over. So as soon as he had a fish, I used to get out into the loch and hold my rod as high up over my head as I could and try and play it hard. And as soon as I lifted into it, I knew it was a roach. You get that jag. So you know you've got a good roach, and I'm playing it in. And head torch, it's pitch black. You know, up there in Scotland, there's like no light pollution at all. So it's just like pitch black until you put your beam on. And these Scottish roach, man, did they fight. They were just absolutely ridiculous. You'd get them to within 20 yards of you, and they just kept flattening your rod and pulling line off your spool and flattening your rod. They're just amazing fighters. And I remember they had the head torch on, and there was like, you know how it gets with the mist coming up off the water, and you was looking, and then you see this massive flash of silver in this pitch black loch, and you think, oh wow, that's a big fish. And I remember netting it and thinking, it's huge, it must be a 2. Run back, put it in the net, bait it up and put it straight back out. And again, I have spoken about this before, but I will say it again. When you catch a fish, a big fish, particularly a roach, that's not the time to admire it, and that's not the time to weigh it, and that's not the time to photograph it. Put it somewhere safe, leave it in your landing nets, wherever, get it nice and safe, get your bait it up and get it straight back out again, because these things don't swim alone. The smallest shoal of them will be 2 or 3 fish, you know, probably more than that. So you've always a chance of a quick take. So get your bait back out again, which is what I did. When my bait's out, weighed it, photographed it, and I think it was 2.13. I thought it was a 2, but it wasn't. It was a 2.13. Half an hour later, 20 minutes later, whatever it was, same rod went again. I had another big roach. Exactly the same thing. Went out, couldn't see it in dark, fighting like anything. Nets it. Oh, surely this one is a 2. Took it back. 2.14, that one was. Cursing myself a little bit. You know, how unlucky are you? A brace of 2s, but, you know, you're after a 3. You really want a 3. Did the same thing. Got my rod back out before I weighed it and everything. And then it got to about 1 o'clock or something like that, 1:30. I got my third fish, and this one was a 2.15, believe it or not. So I've got a 2.13, a 2.14, and a 2.15. Now listen, that's exceptional roach fishing, and clearly I was delighted, and clearly I was happy. But I'm not going to lie, I wanted a 3-pound roach, and I just felt that there was one in my swim that night. So I would have been really disappointed if I'd woke up the following day, but without one. But fortunately for me, I had my 4th and final bite just before daylight. Incidentally, I think 3 fish came on one rod and 1 on the other, and it came to the one that was the most popular coming in from my right to my left. And it felt bigger. It did feel bigger as soon as I hooked it, and it fought really well. And I'm about 20 yards out with my waders, playing it with my head torch on, and it just kept flattening my rod and coming up. And I'm like, please don't come off, please don't come off. I actually netted it, took a look at it, and I thought, this is the one. And unfortunately for me, it was only just. It was exactly £3, £3 on the nose, as people say. But you know, with a 2, 13, 14, and 15, I think I deserved one that weighed exactly 3. And that was like that was my first 3. Massive landmark for me. You know, a £2 roach was something that evading me for a very, very long time in the northwest of England. So to like make that jump up to a 3 was pretty good, and the rest of that week, if I recall, I don't think I actually had another 3 that week. The following night I had several more upper 2s, and I think I had another brace of 215s, and then it tapered off a little bit the week. So I'd had my little peak, but you know, there's a couple of things involved in that, and that was, you know, I had a plan, and as Kevin said, you know, you've got a plan, stick to it, don't lose your nerve now, which we did. My baiting approach, you know, using the stuff with coriander and the dark feed, I think probably worked. Actually, heavily baiting, I think worked. I wouldn't heavily bait on every cut, I guess. Right, so I'm sorry about that. We had to cut there for a second because a helicopter literally came directly above us here, and it messed with the sound. So anyway, so where was it? So yeah, I've caught a 3 pound roach, which, let's face it, is a real landmark fish, isn't it? It's one of those holy grails of angling. You know, a 3 pound roach is like I don't know, a 35 pound pike, 40 pound carp to some, you know, 15 pound barbel, that kind of thing. You know, it's a huge landmark fish. So really pleased with it, and really pleased with what I'd done. That trip fizzled away a little bit. We had a few more upper 2s, but we enjoyed ourselves so much. It was such a lovely place, and the fish was so spectacular that we decided to go back again. So we booked the following April. Now, April's a really good time, in my view, for roach fishing. It's April now. We sat here now on Sutton in April, and it's a few weeks before they spawn. They're at the heaviest weight. They're packing weight on. They can be a bit skitty because they move around a lot, but it is a good time of year. So we found our way back to Loch in April the following year, and unsurprisingly, we all walked around the loch, and I decided to go into the same swim I fished last time, opposite Stir Isle, and I fished for 2 or 3 nights, and had nothing again. And on the 3rd night, but what I should say is that the first 2 nights, although I didn't catch, way down to my left, a long way away, the loch was flat calm in the evening, and I saw a big roach turning, and you know, they were way away from casting distance. It would have to be a pack up and move 500 yards down the bank. But I saw him rolling. That was on the first night, and the second night I saw him rolling again. I'm like, oh. And I know what I said earlier about, you know, don't lose your bottle. 3 nights. It got to the 3rd night, and I did have a fish, and it was a good fish. I think it was 214, something like that. But that was the only fish I had. It was a 214, and all that evening again, I'd seen fish rolling. Now, a little bit of a story here is that Ed Matthews, good mate of mine, was joining us on that trip, but he could only come a couple of days later because of work commitments. So what I'd done is the 2 swims, I'd kept bait going in my swim and a swim for Ed when he got here. You know, just as you do, help a mate out. So that when he arrived, he'd have less time than us, but hopefully there'd have been fish visiting his swim. So we got here at the morning of the 3rd, after the 3rd night, and he says, how's it gone? I said, I had a 214 last night. I said, but you're not going to like what I'm going to say now, mate, but I want to move. And he says, why is that? I said, well, I've been here for 3 nights and I've not stopped seeing fish roll over there. And fair play to him, he said, you know, you've been here longer than me, you've got a feel for water, I haven't. If that's what you think we should do, let's go and do it. So I packed in, and we both went up. We both went down the loch, and we set up on, I think they used to call it the road bank. We set up on it was towards the castle anyway. Big piece of open water, no features, anything. Led it around for a bit, did a bit of plumbing, and I found I had about 3 foot at about 45, 50 yards, but about 60 foot, about 60, 70 yards, I had like 4.5 foot. And I think from where I was, the fish were rolling in the deeper water. So I set myself up with 2 rods on the 60 foot on the 60-yard line, because they were only 0.75 test curves and I couldn't really cast any further. And I had a 1 1/4 with me as well. So that one I weighed it out as far as I could, and I put that one at like 70 yards. Baited up, catapulted it all out, got all my bait there and everything. Fished that night and didn't have anything, but I did see fish rolling about 15 yards beyond my bait. And at first light, there was fish rolling on my bait. Now, I didn't catch, but the following day I said to Ed, we're going to get them. We're going to get them here. I know they are. They've found my bait. They've sniffed on it last night. They've moved in. So we went out. We actually went into Stranraer and had a couple. We needed some pick up some food and stuff. We had a couple of pints in one of the pubs there, and we got back about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I always remember I said to Ed, I'm not going to bait up tonight. Well, I am, but I'm not going to bait up now. I'm going to cast in without baiting. I said, because we put a lot of bait in last night. We've not had any takes. If there's fish there, I don't want to spook them. So I put the 3 rods out, and within about, and what you have to bear in mind here is we just didn't catch fish at Loch during the day at this stage. They were all just coming at night. And we put the baits out, and we sat down, and I'm tidying my bivvy up and everything. And all of a sudden, the rod that was at the one that was furthest out, about 75 yards in the slightly deeper water, just went off, and picked it up. Good fish straight away, and got it in. Can't remember the weight, but it was an upper 213, 214, stuff like that. Put it in the landing net. I remember Ed stood by my landing net while I got my bait straight back out. Put it in, and I walked back to photograph the fish, to photograph and weigh the fish that was in the net. And it went again. I'm like, oh shit! So I grabbed my other net, went back, landed it as well. It was another big 2. I'm like, oh wow! So we've got 2 fish in the net here, and I think one was, it was either 213 and 214 or 214 and 215. But there was 2 really big roach in the net, and we'd had them like 5 minutes apart. So again, did the same thing. Got my bait straight back out, and I can't emphasise how important it is. Don't mess about. Don't look at your fish. Don't weigh them. Get your bait back in the spot. And we just started to lift one of the fish out the net to decide how to land the net to see whether to photograph it and weigh it, and it went again. That same rod, and this time it just went over a bit more. And I remember wading out and playing it. And now you might think I'm talking rubbish now, but I knew it was bigger. I was playing it, and I knew it was bigger than the ones I'd had. It hung that little bit longer. Jagged a little bit heavier. It took a bit longer to get over the shelf, and I've waded quite a way out. And I remember I could hear Ed was behind me with his camera, and you can hear that click, 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 and he's taking action pictures of me. And he keeps shouting to me, "Is it a good one? Is it a good one? Is it a good one?" And I wasn't answering. And I think he said to me, when you don't answer, it's a good one. And we've all done that, haven't we? You don't actually say, "I'm into a good one." You think it is, but you don't say it out loud because you never know. But I in my heart of hearts, I knew this one. And again, I got it really close to the side, and it just started fighting like stink. Gets him in the net, pulls it over, clearly bigger than the other 2. And it was my new personal best, and still my personal best, at £3 2 ounce. So, I think a bit of luck, maybe, a bit of fate, maybe, a bit of watercraft, again, maybe. I think if I'll never know if I hadn't moved, would I have caught in front of Stir Island? Maybe. I think if I'd baited up before I started fishing, would I have spooked them fish and they wouldn't have been me swim? I think I would. I don't think I'd have caught them fish. And I actually got another one soon after. So the footnote is I actually had 4 big roach in about a 20-minute spell in the middle of the day, at a point when they just weren't coming out during the day there. So that was like another eye opener. We'd spent some time the previous week like not fishing during the day. We'd go out and tidy the lodge and have something to eat and get your gear ready and everything. Like, wow, we just caught 4 in that short window. But again, it was, to me, the 2 big reasons we caught them, and that was I'd seen them rolling all the time for the first 3 days, and I knew where I wanted to be, and I couldn't settle where I was. I wanted to go to them fish, And then the second part of the big reason I think we caught was that I didn't bait up before I started fishing. I put baits on where the bait had got in the night before, and I was fortunate that there was a small shoal of big fish there at the time, and reaped the rewards with a stunning 3 pound 2 fish, which, as I say, is still my personal best. Okay, so I mentioned earlier about what feed I use for the roach. This is what I use now. It's the new Sonia Baits one. It's the super feed roach. It's packed with everything you'd want. It's got coriander, vanilla extracts, and all kinds of sweet enhancers in there. And importantly enough, there's no fish meals in there, so it's not drawing carp in, which is what I really want to avoid when I'm roach fishing. And as I said before, especially if the water's clear, I like to darken it. So I use this again. It's another one without fish meals in. It's got the same kind of heavy mix of coriander stuff and crushed hemp. But this is a really dark base. So if you mix that with that, you get a really dark, lovely mix. And then, of course, I always put some hemp in, a bit of hemp in there. Always riddle it. If you don't riddle your ground feed, you never get a proper mix. Don't cut corners. Always riddle your ground feed. And finally, again, this is coriander mix, and I like adding a bit of extra of that to it. I don't know why, I've got no idea why, but roach love coriander, so I tend to put a sprinkling of that into a mix as well. So there you have it, super feed, a bit of black roach in to tone it down, and then if you like a bit of extra, get on that coriander. It's a brilliant mix. I'll make a long story short. Loch Ness had its day. The owner decided that he was going to drain the loch, and he drained it down to a level that was unsustainable for the big fish, and yeah, it had a sad demise. But there were some glorious years on there, and a few anglers had great fun on there, myself included. So you're always looking for something else to do, aren't you? And I'm on Sutton now. I've told you that, and Sutton's become a kind of a roach water of choice for me for the last 3 or 4 years. And there's an interesting story behind it. I was coming back. Oh, that's a take. Oh, a guppy. Never mind. It's a bit of activity. I was coming back from pike fishing with Ed, or no, zander fishing. We'd been on the Severn zander fishing. It was the end of the season, and I was saying I'm a bit of a loose end, and he said to me, "Why don't you try Sutton for the roach?" I said, "I didn't even know there were roach in." I said, "I know we've caught little ones." He said, well, a couple of the carp anglers have reported getting, fish probably well over £1 pound. So I said, "Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll come and give that a go." And a couple of weeks went by, and I came down, and all I came down with was a quiver tip rod, maggot feeder, a couple of pints of maggots, and I set up over there by the dam wall. I thought I'll go in the deepest area of the pool, and started casting in and fishing as you do, clipped up and accurately. Lovely way of fishing, small feeder rod just down the side, 4 pound line. And I started getting a few little perch and a few little roach, and then kind of late that afternoon I got a really good pull round bite, and I hit it. I thought, this is a better one. Anyway, it was a roach. It was about 1.6, 1.8, something like that, and I thought, nice, really, really nice looking fish. I'm having a nice day, pleasant day, not expecting much more than that. And I caught 1 or 2 4 fish, and then just before dark I had another good take on it, and I hooked it. My little quiver tip rod just went round. Oh, wow, what's this? For a second or two I thought I've got a carp or even a crucian that's come out early in spring, but it felt like a roach. I could feel the jag. Anyway, got it in the net, and it was a £2 pound roach. I think it was 2.1 or 2.2, 2.3. It was a low 2 anyway. But I phoned Ed all excited. I said, "Mate, I've just had a 2. He's like, "Really?" I said, yeah. I'm like, wow, the 2's in there. So I think I came back another couple of times that spring and had a couple more mid 2s or low 2s or stuff like that. And then it's kind of progressed from there. Instead of fishing the quiver tip like that, we've fished like this, and for the last 3 or 4 years, you know, I've fished for the Roach, as has Ed, and as has quite a few people who've, you know, got the ticket and come on here. And yeah, I got a lot of nice Roach, you know, quite big ones. I always remember one day that I caught 3, and the way it started was I'd come down on my own, but Ed was working in the area, and he said, I'll be there, kind of midday, early afternoon. Give us a ring if you have anything. So I was fishing a few swims that way again towards the dam wall, and I had a couple of decent fish, and then I had a really nice one, which was I think it was 214. And just at that point, my phone goes, and it said, he said, have you had anything? I said, I've got a 214 in the net. I literally just caught it. He said, oh, I'm 10 minutes away. He said, do you want me to photograph it for you? I said, no, mate, there's no point retaining it. I'll put it back. I said, just photograph me 3 when you get here. Laughing, you know, as you do, and we'll put it back, or I put it back and put my rod back out again. 5 or 10 minutes later, I get another take. This feels a good one. I looked at it net. I thought, wow, this is a proper fish. This is, and weighed it. Well, no, actually, no, yeah, that's right. I weighed it. I thought, yes, it's a 3. Like, you know what I mean? So 3-1 it was, and like at the time, you know, Sutton hadn't done a 3. It was doing some lovely 2s, but it had never done a 3. So just at that point, I hear Ed's truck roll up on Car Park, and I'm only in the swim just below it, and he wanders over and he says, have you had anything? I said, yeah. He said, any good? I said, well, you know, I said, you can photograph that 3 when you come. He said, yeah. I said, well, you can. It's in net. And he's like, you're joking, aren't you? So we got it out, and Ed reweighed it and everything. And yeah, it was 3-1, and that was right, quite notable, because, well, for me, it was my first 3 from England. You know, my previous ones had all come from Scotland, so 3-1 from England was great. But for Ed, you know, it was a real landmark for him. You know, he ran a water that was already well known for its carp, already very well known for its exceptional crucian carp fishing, and suddenly there are 3-pound roach in there. So it was it's significant for me and significant for Ed, and you know, I was obviously just as pleased for him. And then we fished on, and I don't think I had another 3 that year. I think I only fished it one more time. It was getting on to when the fish were going to spawn, and of course, once they start spawning, we won't fish for them. We generally stop fishing for them towards end of April. So we came back the following year, and this time we had a day and we fished on the far bank over there. And I remember it was a lovely day, and me and Ed were fishing side by side, two separate swims, and I was catching. Ed was on my left hand side, and I was catching. Most of the fish were coming on my right hand rod, and I had 2 or 3 really good fish, and then the next fish I caught was another 3. It was a 3-1. And of course, I'm really happy with it. I got a 3, but I kind of wanted Ed to have caught it, because, you know, it's his water. He's a good mate. We fish it a lot. And I really wanted him to get a 3, really. And anyway, we're mates, and there's no jealousy or anything like that. And he took some brilliant photographs of it. It was a lovely fish, and we put back what was my second 3 from here. And it was a lovely day. It was kind of mid to late April. The sun was going out. We're thinking this is probably our last session this year. And we sat in the sun's out around a drink. And then Ed gets a take, and he jumps on it. And just as he got a take, my phone went, and I had to pick it up because it was sort of phone. So I answered the call, finished with the call, and when I turned round, Ed was running. Ed did a forward roll into my swim and went 3, and of course it was, and I walked back into him and jumped with him, and we got out, and he got a stunning fish, and his was 3. I can't remember if it's 3-1 or 3-2. Ed'll tell you. But what a lovely thing to happen, you know, for 2 mates to get a brace of 3s, a 3 each, a really, really rare fish like that on the same day. And that goes down as one of my favourite days in angling, the fact that, you know, the 2 of us both caught, you know, a really exceptional fish from what is an exceptional water. And then I saw the next adventure. I say I've got a 3.2 is my personal best. 3.2 is my UK personal best. And there's a lot of you'll know I go across to Holland most years to fish with another good mate, Tim, and Mike, his friend, for perch. I've been going over there for years, and one year I went over, before I went, Tim said to me, you really need to come and fish for the roach on this river, this stretch of river I've found, and I'm catching some really big roach, up to and over 3 pounds. And I thought, well, yeah, a river roach. But, you know, part of me is going, oh, I'm in Holland, I'm perch fishing. And I've had perch there up to 5.15 or 5.14. I think it's 5.15. So, like, part of me wanted a 6, but Tim was saying, oh, these roach are spectacular, we need to have. So I said, yeah, okay. So we finished perch fishing early and spent the last couple of days fishing this stretch of river where Tim had been catching some really nice roach. And, yeah, we soon got amongst them. We wasn't fishing like this at all. A lot more traditional fishing because it's a river and it's flowing cat hard. Rods up in the air, running rigs, probably about 45, 60 gram feeder. Long running rigs, 18 inch long, maggot and caster cocktails. And the roach were a bit green, you know, they weren't finicky or anything, so you didn't need these little helicopter rigs. Getting amazing bites on them, and I can't remember how many I caught, but I probably had a dozen to 15 fish on that day we fished for the roach. And amongst them, there was 3 pounders, believe it or not. I had 2 which weighed 3.1, 3.2. And the biggest one I had a 3.8, which was just probably the best looking fish I've ever caught. Not a scale missing on it. Huge fish. Immaculate fish. And unfortunately, the story didn't end there, because a couple of casts later, I had a take, and it was obviously another really big roach. It was hanging on heavier than this one, deeper than this one. And was fishing quite deep water off these stones in this river. And as I was getting it closer and closer, it suddenly locked up right under the rod tip. And for a moment, I couldn't figure out what had happened. And then there was a huge boil, and it just swam off. And obviously, a huge pike had just taken this roach, which was probably well in excess of 3.5 pounds. And it just swam off, and eventually, obviously, snapped my line. But I guess only in Holland would you lose a 3.5 pound roach to a pike at your feet. So I went back the following year, had some great fishing again, caught another couple of 3s. I think I had up to 3, 4. So I've had a pretty charmed life when it comes to my roach fishing, I guess. I've done the hard miles, you know. I've fished the hard Lancashire and Cheshire waters, driven up to Scotland, spent hours, weeks, you know, looking for them. But eventually I've been lucky enough to get myself, you know, 4, 5, 6 3 pounders, whatever it is. I don't keep records, so I can't really remember. But yeah, I've been quite fortunate, and now I find myself back here on Sutton. It's a quiet day today. We had all our action this morning when it was pouring down with rain. It's only like 3 o'clock now, so 20 to 3. It does come on a bit, you know, late afternoon, early evening. So I fancy I might get 1 or 2 more chances. But listen, it's a superb water. There are 3 pounders in front of me, and anyone can fish it. You know, you can get a ticket. Anyone can book on and come and fish for what is the holy grail of roach fishing. So I do hope you've enjoyed today. I hope you've picked up a few little bits and pieces. I hope you've enjoyed talking about roach, one of my favourite fish. And hopefully I'll see you all again soon.